Now that we've talked about phrases and cadences and then small form structures like periods, double periods, and sentences, we're going to loop back to the beginning of this term's chapters. So I guess chapter 6, I think, 5 in Casca, we'll start talking about part writing. So I'm going to try and explain in this video real quickly what part writing is and some basics to get us going so that we can learn specific part writing techniques. Part writing refers to when you write music, for instance, if you have a choir singing these notes right here, you have a soprano part, an alto part, a tenor part, and a bass part, known as SATB writing. Part writing is the technique of knowing when we go from one instance of a chord to another chord or another melody note in the same chord, what each of these parts do, where they go in the next chord, so that it's not random, it's by technique. There are rules and such that will guide us to give us what we call orthodox or traditional sounding sort of composition, arrangement of the parts from one chord to the next. That's part writing. And so traditionally we learn four-part writing, in other words, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, but sometimes we also learn rules for three-part, which would probably be like soprano, alto, and some kind of baritone or bass line as well. And these amount to getting the chord set up correctly, using correct conventions of spacing between the notes, what parts of the chords have to be not only here, but maybe doubled, because in a three-note chord, you're going to have four notes given, so one of them has to be doubled. And then rules about how you get from this instant to the next instance and such like that. There's rules for stems and things. And so in this first video, we're just going to talk about setting up your spacing and where the notes go and what gets doubled. Now, basically, just before we do that, we're learning a style called chorale style writing, which if you look at a hymnal in a church book or something like this, this is what we're talking about, writing for four-part choirs or chorales. And any kind of hymn writing or chorales by Bach and things like that follow these basic rules and styles. But not just there. If you want to write for instruments and other things, the principles involved in this branch outward and affect what we do in that kind of style of writing. So even though this is one specific kind of application, we're actually interested in the things we learn from it because it allows us to write other things. Even when you are only writing for two parts or one parts, the things that we learn from here we can grab and apply just to one part or two parts as well. All right, so first off, rule number one, when we write this, we're going to have treble clef and a bass clef. Soprano is going to be the highest note. Alto is going to be the lower note on the top staff. Tenor is going to be the higher note on the bass clef staff, and the bass is going to be the lower note. So we have what we call score order, right? Like this, from high to low. Okay, that means altos don't go above sopranos, basses don't go above tenors, sopranos don't go below, etc. And these guys will never go up into that staff. These guys will never go down into that staff. These are just basic setup and writing conventions. So we have a score order of top to bottom, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. These two are in the top, these two are in the bottom. They don't cross voices, okay? That's number one. Spacing, so score order. Spacing is the second thing, and what we're going to talk about there is the distance between the notes. And traditionally, and I'm going to write this so that you can see like random note here, random note here. This doesn't make a chord, okay? But, and then there. The largest spacing you can have, this is soprano, that's alto, tenor is bass, is this is equal to or less than a perfect octave. And this is equal to or less than a perfect octave, meaning that sopranos and altos at their max distance apart can only be up to an octave apart, and altos and tenors can also only be at a max distance up to a perfect octave apart, right? So they can be closer, of course, but they can't, any two pair of these upper voices can't go more than an octave apart. However, between the tenor and bass, any interval, even more than an octave, is fine. Okay? All right. In other words, the upper voices like to be able to hold hands, reach out and touch the next note next to them and feel that they're there. The basses can be up with inside an octave and close to the tenors, but not so much. It doesn't matter if they go a long ways away. Okay? So that's spacing. All right. The next thing is stems. And we can already see from here, but stem direction. Okay? Stem direction. When you write for this kind of part writing, again, sopranos and altos, tenors and basses, okay? Soprano stems go up, alto stems go down, okay? And we could do the same thing here. Tenor stems go up, bass stems go down, right? So we have to get stem direction correct, okay? Sopranos and tenors go up, altos and basses, they go down. All right. Doubling. To begin with, we're going to work with triads, which are 3 notes, and yet we have 4 voices or parts. So we always double the root to begin with. Okay? That means you're going to have a root and a root somewhere else, and a third and a fifth. Okay? Later, we'll have more sophisticated rules for this. Okay? And also, to begin with, we're going to be in root position. Okay? Meaning that the lowest note will always be the root of the chord. So this is to begin with, and it's not that this is bad, but it's the most basic and strong way of voicing or writing the notes of the chord, and also positioning the bass note as well. After we master a bunch of different ways of doing formulas for this using these rules, then we'll talk about what do we do if we're not in root position, or what do we do if we don't want to double the root. And there are accommodations, but let's learn the basics first. Is there anything else that we want to know about this? Nope, I think that's it right now. It goes without saying that we're only going to use chord tones right now. We're not going to use non-chord tones. And the first thing you'll do is you'll have a worksheet that you'll download. And it's got a bunch of examples here saying what's wrong with this, right? So it could be okay, it could be bad, right? But cross voicings, meaning like the soprano or is below the altos or something like that. Stems are in the wrong direction for the parts. The notes are on the wrong staff. The chord is incomplete, meaning it doesn't have a root, third, or fifth. It's got improper doubling, means it's not doubling the root, or improper spacing, which means that the upper voices, soprano to alto, have more than an octave between them, or the alto to the bass has more than an octave between them. Okay? So you'll go here and you will try and find those errors. Okay? And then the next worksheet is let's actually practice doing our first connection method of chords. And that's for another video. So in conclusion, score order: soprano highest, alto next, tenor, bass. In this order always. They don't cross over. Basses don't go above tenors, etc. Soprano and alto stay on the upper voice, or sorry, the upper staff. Tenor and bass down the lower staff. Okay? We're going to write for 3 parts. Sometimes we'll write for 4 parts, but then we'll make accommodations to our rules for that. Spacing. The upper 2 voices, soprano, alto, never have more than an octave between them. They can be up to a unison, by the way. They could be on the same line. And then up to an octave, but they can never have more than an octave. Same thing for altos and tenors, no more than an octave between them. But between tenor and bass, they can be as big a distance as you like, or they can be right up to a unison on the same note as well. Stem direction: sopranos go up, tenors go up because of the top part of the staff that they're on. Altos go down, basses go down. Okay. For now, we're going to have all our chords be in root position, meaning that the lowest note will be the root, and we're always going to double the root. This will change over time, though. But to begin with, all our formulas will encapsulate these good principles of writing, and then later we'll talk about what happens next.